Central to Unit Echo 2. We've got a red flag anomaly at Site B9. Vault breach confirmed 3 days ago. Contents cleared. But at 4:41 this morning, a 911 call was received. Origin traced from inside that same vault. No access recorded. No movement detected. Caller ID reads, line disconnected. Operator unknown. Proceed with silent response protocol. This is now case 78Q.
The vault at Site B9 had already been the center of a full-scale federal investigation. 3 days earlier, a precision-level heist had emptied it entirely. No alarms, no forced entry, no fingerprints. The steel doors had been closed from the inside, then reopened 6 hours later to reveal nothing. Millions in seized evidence gone. Every external camera feed wiped clean. Internal motion sensors never triggered. What remained was a vacuum of logic, an embarrassment for everyone involved. The case had already been shelved as unsolvable. Until today, at 4:41 a.m., dispatch received a 911 call from within the vault's exact coordinates. The line held for 11 seconds. The voice was male, quiet, shaky. He said only one sentence before the call ended. "I'm still in here." The signal traced back through analog relays, not from a cell tower, not from a burner, from the vault's old internal emergency comms line, disconnected since 2014. When officers arrived minutes later, the vault was still sealed. No signs of entry, no pressure changes, no thermal shifts. But something had changed. On the inside wall, scratched into the stainless steel with what appeared to be a bone fragment, were the words, "They left me during the rehearsal." No one could explain how the message got there. The vault had been cleaned, sealed, and digitally vacuum logged after the heist, and yet, something or someone had written from within. Officer Harris, first on the scene, refused to speak. During the report, he only nodded once and whispered, "That wasn't a rescue call. That was a warning." And from that moment on, no one went near the vault alone. Lieutenant Avery Monroe arrived on site at 5:17 a.m., less than an hour after the call. She had overseen the original investigation into the vault heist and was not pleased to be summoned back to a supposedly cleared location. But the look on Harris's face when she questioned him said more than the logs. The man looked hollowed out, like someone who'd heard something he wasn't supposed to. She reviewed the call recording personally. The audio was warped, degraded, but unmistakably human. A male voice, weak but steady. "I'm still in here, no panic, no shouting, just resignation." She replayed it again, isolating background frequencies. That's when she heard it, just under the voice, nearly lost in the static. A second sound, breathing, shallow, staggered, but not from the same man. It overlapped by half a second. Impossible in an enclosed environment unless there were two people in the vault. When the call was made, but there weren't, there couldn't be. The vault had no internal life support, no light, no access panels that weren't monitored. Monroe reviewed the building's schematics again and again. No alternative exit, no crawl space, no ventilation shaft large enough for human passage. Still, she ordered the door opened manually. It took 3 separate override authorizations. When the final lock disengaged, the pressure seal hissed, same as always. Inside, nothing. No movement, no figure. But the air smelled off, like sweat and ozone. Something alive had been there recently. On the floor, right beneath the calm terminal, was a single fingerprint in blood. Not in the database, not in any criminal record. But the lab flagged something strange. The print wasn't fresh. It was identical to a sample found during the original heist. A print dated 3 days ago. The fingerprint wasn't just a match, it was an exact replication. Same ridge spacing, same pressure distribution, same distortion near the lower whorl, the kind of detail that should only appear once, even on consecutive touches. Forensics confirmed it wasn't a duplicate sample. It had been made again, at the exact same angle, in the exact same spot, 3 days after the first, which was impossible. Human bodies can't replicate biometric data like that naturally, especially not under duress. But there it was. Monroe stood in the observation chamber above the vault, staring at the terminal that had pinged the 911 call. It was old tech, disconnected from the grid, its power source long dead. Yet, the call log was there, embedded in analog memory, no digital trail, no GPS bounce, just a direct, one-way signal to dispatch, as if someone inside had bypassed every system built to contain them. She ordered a team to begin dismantling the comm panel. Behind it, they found something none of them had expected, a narrow cavity in the wall, roughly the width of a human torso. It hadn't been on any blueprint, and it didn't seem to lead anywhere. But inside the cavity, stuck to the metal with old blood, was a torn fragment of paper, faded, crumpled, but legible. It read, "Don't trust the first rescue." And below that, scrawled messily like an afterthought, "It resets when the door closes." The vault was sealed again within the hour, this time with round-the-clock observation. But something had already changed. The pressure readings on the interior sensor began fluctuating, as if the room was breathing. And at 3:12 a.m. the following night, without any new access, the motion detector inside the vault triggered again. Lieutenant Monroe didn't sleep that night. She stayed in the surveillance hub, eyes fixed on the vault feed, rewinding frame by frame through every second of motion. At 3:12 a.m., just as the internal sensor lit green, a soft static ripple passed through the video, almost like a skip, a pulse of distortion that lasted no more than a quarter second. But when she scrubbed it slowly, frame by frame, one image froze her cold. For a single frame, just one, there was a figure inside, standing, still, facing the camera. The image was blurred, distorted by motion, but the outline was unmistakable. Uniformed, male, head tilted slightly, as if listening. No details could be made out, no face, no badge number, but the posture, it matched the original officer suspected to be on duty. The night of the heist, the one who'd vanished without a trace. Officer J. Layton, his file was still, sealed by federal order, citing internal compromise. Monroe pulled his personnel photo, the posture, the stance, the angle of the neck tilt. Identical. She replayed the frame 10 times, then again, and each time, it changed, not in content, in presence. The figure became clearer, not fully, but as if watching the footage repeatedly was drawing it out of the static. She called in IT to isolate the anomaly, but when they checked, the original footage from the drive, that single frame was gone, completely replaced by a blank segment. No figure, no glitch, as if it had never existed. Monroe checked the backup, still nothing, only her version, saved manually before she had called anyone. The figure only existed in that one copy, and now the timestamp on it had changed. It no longer read 3:12 a.m., it read 3:12 a.m. tomorrow. The timestamp glitch wasn't dismissed, it became the focus. Monroe ordered all digital systems decoupled from external sync, isolating the precinct surveillance mainframe to local time only. But even then, the inconsistencies persisted. Video logs began looping at 3:12 a.m., showing the same 10-second segment twice in a row before resuming. Phone call records bounced with false timestamps. One log, labeled as occurring at 3:15 a.m., was traced back to a call that hadn't happened yet. A call Monroe herself was scheduled to make during her next shift, but the audio already existed, her voice unmistakably hers, reporting a second appearance in the vault. Same wording she had used in her internal notes, but never spoken aloud. The system wasn't just reacting, it was predicting, or worse, remembering ahead of time. She ran a cross-check of all officer badge scans near the vault since the heist. To entries flagged red, same ID, scanned seconds apart, but the ID belonged to a retired officer, one who died in 2012. His access card had been destroyed, or so the records claimed. When they checked the physical access logs, the card had been used 5 times in the last 3 days. The timestamps matched the vault's motion alerts. Monroe requested the surveillance footage from those exact moments, but each video segment had been overwritten, not with static, but with placeholder text, data occupied active instance. She had never seen that phrase before. No one had. The IT specialist tried to remove the block, but as he typed, his screen glitched and rebooted, displaying only one word in red font, centered against a black background, rehearsal. That was the second time Monroe had seen the word. The first was scratched into the vault wall. Monroe returned to the vault alone just after 4 a.m., carrying only a flashlight, a printed copy of the altered footage, and her badge. The steel door loomed ahead like a sealed wound, silent, imposing, waiting. She had spent nearly 20 years investigating anomalies, but nothing had ever behaved like this. The vault wasn't reacting to intrusion. It was cycling, repeating something, preserving a moment no one remembered the first time. She placed her palm against the cold surface and whispered the word. Out loud, rehearsal. Nothing happened, but the silence inside seemed to deepen, as if the vault had heard. She walked the perimeter, eyes scanning every inch of metal. Then she saw it, a faint etching near the floor, almost invisible unless the light hit it just right. Another message, new, different handwriting. It read, "You weren't supposed to say it twice." Monroe froze, her hands trembled. The message hadn't been there during the original investigation. She would have seen it. She checked the floor, no footprints, no signs of tampering, just those 6 words, perfectly centered, written with something sharp. The vault's internal sensor pinged again. No access triggered, no doors opened, but pressure inside the sealed space had changed, increased, like someone had just exhaled. The internal mic, dead since 2014, flickered to life for half a second, and in that moment, every monitor in the surveillance room lit up, static, then a frame, the same figure as before, this time clearer. Officer Layton. He was staring directly at the camera, mouth slightly open, and on the wall behind him, spray-painted in red, were for new words, "We rehearse until you listen." Then the screen went black, and Monroe knew the call hadn't been the beginning. It was the cue. Lieutenant Monroe spent the next 48 hours off-grid. No dispatch updates, no external contact. She requested physical access to the oldest known archive the department still kept, a paper-only storage unit on the outskirts of the city, untouched since the precinct went digital in 2009. There, buried beneath mislabeled folders and forgotten chain of custody reports, she found a locked cabinet marked Vault Incidents Incomplete. Inside, every document bore a red slash. Across the header and a single phrase, "Report suspended by external directive." The dates varied, 1981, 1994, 2003, but the content was disturbingly similar. Emergency calls from inside sealed rooms, identical voices speaking different words across decades, scratch warnings left behind that no one remembered writing. In each file, one name appeared on the investigating team, Officer J. Layton, every time, sometimes as lead, sometimes as a secondary, but always present. The last known address listed for Layton was a condemned house just south of District 12. Monroe went there at dusk, unsure if she expected a lead or just shadows. The building had been fire damaged, half swallowed by vines. Inside, she found the remnants of a desk, a melted computer, and a bulletin board scarred by smoke. But in the center of the wall, untouched by fire, was a Polaroid photo nailed into place. It showed Layton standing in front of the vault, same uniform, same tilt of the head, but in the reflection of the vault door behind him, Monroe could see herself, not from now, from years ago. Same hairstyle, same posture, but wearing a badge she hadn't received yet. She stared in silence, throat dry, heart thudding, and at the bottom of the photo, someone had written in pen, "You weren't the first to chase the call, just the first to hear it right." Monroe brought the photo back to the precinct and submitted it for analysis. The lab confirmed something she already suspected, but hoped to disprove. The photo was authentic. No digital manipulation, no composite layering. The chemical composition of the film stock matched Polaroid batches from 1996. And yet, her image, clear, central, in full, uniform, should not have been there. She hadn't even joined the academy until 2007. She checked every staff photo from the year the picture was supposedly taken. Layton was listed. She was not, but when she zoomed in on a group photo taken that same year, blurry in the back corner, a figure resembling her stood partially turned. No name tag, no record. But undeniably her. The anomaly wasn't just repeating events, it was retrofitting them, assigning presence to people before they arrived. Rehearsal wasn't metaphorical, it was literal, a system test, a loop, and the vault wasn't the source. It was the stage. She dove back into audio logs from the original heist investigation and layered them with recordings. From the 911 call, the waveforms weren't just similar, they matched. The caller's voice in 2025 was an echo-perfect match to Layton's from 1997. The same vocal crack, the same intake of breath between syllables. Either someone was duplicating voices with impossible precision, or Layton had made both calls. Across decades. But why? The vault's door sensors pinged again that night. No sound, no movement. Just 3 seconds of recorded vibration, like footsteps, inside. Monroe entered the observation deck, heart pounding, and stared through the glass. For a split second, she saw herself reflected in the steel, but she wasn't wearing her current uniform. It was older, faded, and her badge didn't read Monroe. It read Layton. Monroe didn't report the reflection. She didn't log the sensor vibration. Something inside her understood. The deeper she went into this, the less she belonged to anything linear. Later that night, alone in her office, she found a folder on her desk. It hadn't been there before. No one saw who placed it. It was labeled only with her initials, SAM. Inside were personnel documents from 3 different decades, each with a version of her name. Sarah Monroe in 2025, Samantha A. Morgan in 1997, and S. Morrow in 1981. Each listed similar details. Height, training history, assignment to vault-related cases, different badge numbers, different precincts, but the same face in every photo. A note was paperclipped to the last page, typed, faintly burned at the edges. It read, "The system doesn't assign names, it assigns roles." That night, she accessed the vault's internal control panel again. The keypad flickered on before she touched it. A prompt appeared on screen. Continue from last rehearsal? 2 options below, yes or nitrogen monoxide. She didn't choose. She walked away. But as she exited, the screen blinked once, and the vault door released with a hiss on its own. Inside, nothing had changed. Same silence, same still air. But on the floor sat a second chair. It hadn't been there before. Identical to the first, facing the same wall. On the seat, a badge. She picked it up. It was old, scratched, but still legible. Officer J. Layton, but taped to the back of the badge was a sticky note. In her handwriting, it said, "Don't forget, you're next." She looked around the empty vault, then at the door, and this time, it closed by itself. The next morning, the precinct's internal calendar shifted, not just digitally, physically. Printed rosters taped to bulletin boards now listed the date as March 20th, 1997. Computers, wall clocks, even incoming time-stamped emails carried the wrong year. Most assumed it was a server error, but Monroe knew better. She tested her theory by calling in a dispatch request for an old, closed case, the 1997 vault disturbance. The system accepted it without question. No warnings, no conflict, as if the case had just happened. She asked a junior officer to pull any available physical files on it. He returned holding a folder that hadn't existed in over 2 decades, but was now stamped active. Inside, surveillance stills she had never seen. Reports written in her own phrasing, but not her handwriting. One document had her signature. At the bottom, dated 3 days from now. The vault wasn't just looping moments. It was adjusting the environment around them, retrofitting the precinct to match the memory it wanted to preserve. When she accessed the digital personnel directory, she found her name twice. One entry listed her current title. The second listed her as decommissioned, March 24th, 1997. For days from now, she tried deleting the second entry. The system denied. Her access restricted to command-level clearance. Officer Layton. The loop wasn't closing. It was preparing. On her desk sat the badge from the vault, the one labeled Layton. She flipped it over again. This time, the note was gone. In its place, engraved directly into the plastic, were the words, Case 78Q, Observer confirmed. Monroe stared at the screen. her reflection now slightly out of sync with her movement. Behind her, the vault door camera blinked green. No access recorded. But the room was no longer empty. Monroe began to notice it in the others. Subtle at first, a pause in conversation, a misremembered room layout, a hallway that led somewhere different than the day before. Officer Keene called her by the wrong name twice, then apologized, saying he thought she had transferred out years ago. When she reminded him they'd worked the same shift for 5 straight weeks, he blinked like someone waking up mid-dream. The bulletin board now included case numbers she didn't recognize, but already had partial memories of. One sticky note read, "Don't forget second entry." She hadn't written it, but the handwriting matched hers. The precinct's printers began spitting out paperwork at random intervals. Reports tied to dates decades apart, signed by people long dead or never born. Monroe found a photo in the break room showing the full department staff. Her face was in the back row, but the photo was dated 1989. She hadn't been born yet. Each day, the vault cam recorded exactly 1 second of untraceable visual distortion at 3:12 a.m. It looked like heatwave blur at first, until she isolated the frame and saw the same seated figure, now holding a folder labeled Case 78Q. She sent the frame to IT for analysis. It came back corrupted. The file labeled itself as Rehearsal, Complete, Prepare Observer Exit. She tried to shut down the surveillance system. The power cut. The lights dimmed. Emergency generators hummed to life, except in the vault wing. That hallway remained dark, but on her internal terminal, a new countdown appeared, 0 hours 3 minutes and 12 seconds beneath it. One word pulsed slowly in red, exit. It didn't say who was supposed to leave or what might happen if no one did. Monroe stood in front of the vault, alone. The countdown had stopped at 0 nearly an hour ago, but nothing had happened, at least. Nothing anyone else could see. She carried a recorder, notepad, flashlight, and the Layton badge. The building was silent, like it was waiting for something that had already occurred. She keyed in the override sequence, half expecting rejection. But this time, the vault opened before she finished. No hiss, no lights, just open. Inside, the 2 chairs remained, but now a third sat between them, smaller, wooden, like it didn't belong. And yet, it fit perfectly. On the seat was a box. She stepped inside, breath held, knees stiff. The vault closed behind her. The pressure stabilized. She didn't panic. Somehow, it felt familiar. She sat in the third chair, opened the box. Inside, 3 Polaroids. One showed her standing outside the vault. Another showed her inside it. And the third showed her asleep in her office, timestamped 6 hours into the future. Beneath the photos was a cassette, labeled in handwriting she knew was hers. Though she never wrote it, Rehearsal Complete, Observer Reset Approved. She inserted the tape into the recorder and pressed play. Her own voice came through, but not from memory, from some other version of her, calm, measured. If you're hearing this, you've made it to your final iteration. You've seen the edges. You've folded enough to know the truth. There's no original. There's only the last to remember. Then silence, then a knock from the inside wall of the vault. 1, then 2, then nothing. And behind her, in the mirrored reflection of the steel, a figure stood, face obscured, uniform familiar. And when it spoke, it used her voice. Ready when you are. At 6 a.m., the station's automated shift protocol resumed as if nothing had occurred. Lights returned, doors unlocked, terminals booted clean. Surveillance logs between 3 o'clock and 4 a.m. were marked routine maintenance. No one questioned it. The few officers on duty moved through the halls as usual, unaware that anything had shifted, because for them, it hadn't. Monroe's office was locked, lights off, nameplate still on the door. Her locker stood closed, untouched. But when Officer Keene passed by her desk, he noticed something strange. Her badge was there, centered perfectly, and beneath it, a sticky note, blank, except for a timestamp. 3:12 a.m. At logs showed no login from Monroe's credentials since the night before. But when the system admin tried to archive her profile, an error code appeared. Observer thread active, access deferred. Her ID photo flickered between diversions, one current, one older, marked 1997. When they searched the physical vault room, the door was sealed again. No override requests had been filed, but inside, through the observation camera, the 3 chairs remained empty. The box was gone. On the back wall, someone had drawn the triangle, 3 corners broken inward, as if folding over themselves. Beneath it, a line of writing had appeared, scrawled in red marker. Only the last version remembers. The building resumed its rhythm. Phones rang. Reports were filed. The precinct continued, obedient, blind, functional. But every night at 3:12 a.m., the internal sensors inside the vault ticked once. No alarms, no motion, just pressure, subtle and rhythmic, as if something inside were breathing. Not trapped, not waiting, but watching. And from somewhere within the server core, one file remained undeletable. Case 78Q open. Over the following days, Monroe's absence became normalized. No alerts, no missing persons bulletin. Her office was quietly cleared, her name removed from the active roster. But no one submitted the request. The system had done it itself. Officer Keene tried to mention her during briefing once, said her name mid-sentence, and suddenly paused, as if something rewrote his memory in real time. "Sorry," he mumbled. "I meant, never mind." A week later, new recruits were assigned to the precinct. One of them passed the vault on his first patrol. He stopped, just for a second, and stared at the door like he'd seen it before. When another officer asked if he was okay, he answered without hesitation, "This is where it repeats, right?" No one had told him about the case. He didn't even know what was inside the vault. But when Monroe's old badge was shown to him, he identified it instantly. "She trained me," he said, "before, I think," but his training record listed no mentor. His academy file was missing its second page. On the precinct server, a new folder had appeared, Observers, Pending. It contained dozens of photos, all blurry, all seated in the vault. Some were men, some women. Some had faces erased by glare, but every one of them looked toward the camera. In one, faint but visible, Monroe appeared again. Same chair, same expression, different uniform underneath her image. The file name had no date, only a label, version_final. The folder could not be deleted. Attempts to remove it caused the system to crash. Every time it rebooted, the folder returned, and the screen displayed a new message, "Playback ready, awaiting new observer." The cursor blinked, then typed itself, "Rehearsal begins in 0 hours 3 minutes and 12 seconds. At exactly 3:12 a.m. The power dimmed throughout the precinct, not completely, just enough to flicker the edges of perception. Cameras paused, clocks blinked, and in the vault, the internal mic activated for 11 seconds. No one triggered it. The recording wasn't logged through dispatch, but later, when the system ran its automatic diagnostics, one clip appeared in the archive, untagged. It contained no words, only breathing, calm, familiar. On a desk in the captain's office, a new report printed itself slowly, no sender, no command. The header read, "Case 78Q, cycle initiated." Attached to the final page, with a rusted paperclip, was a single Polaroid. It showed the vault, 3 chairs, all empty, but the photo had been taken from inside the room, from the perspective of someone already seated. On the back, someone had written in smudged ink, "You're not watching the case. The case is watching you." From that night forward, no one used the vault. It remained locked, sealed, ignored. Officers passed it without speaking. New recruits weren't told about it, yet some still paused as they walked by, eyes drawn to the door as if it whispered to them. Some claimed they dreamed of it before ever being assigned to the station. And once a month, like clockwork, the server generated a new name for the observer queue. Names of people who had never been hired. Names of those who had already left. Names with no photo, no fingerprint, just a timestamp, 3:12 a.m. and every time that arrived, the building seemed to hold its breath, waiting, listening, remembering. Because some vaults don't protect what's inside. They rehearse what was never allowed to escape, and Case 78Q never closed.